What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Dylan Grub here, Extreme.Outdoorsmen. If you guys are new here to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button for me. Help me at 30,000 subscribers. I would really appreciate it. But in today's video, as you've seen from the title and the thumbnail, I'm going to be going over some of my favorite lures that me and my dad throw when we go down there to South Florida chasing after a double-digit largemouth bass. We've been fishing down there, I think, ever since 2018 when we first made the trek down there all the way from Michigan, like over 24 hours. Me and my dad usually go down there every single year, and we usually go for about a week or two, and we usually connect into a couple big bass. Obviously, we've been learning more and more every time we go down there about all the different lakes down there. We've been finding new lakes to fish, and there's just so many fisheries down there that hold giant bass, so it is always fun going down there in the super nice weather when it's cold up here in Michigan. Obviously, I wish I was on the boat right now up here in Michigan, but it is cold. It's the middle of winter, and pretty much all the lakes are freezing over right now, so I got the boat away. But like I said, I'm gonna go over all of my favorite lures that me and my dad have thrown down there in South Florida, either on Okeechobee, Headwaters, Lake Garcia, a couple other lakes down there. So we've done pretty good for only fishing down there for a short period. We've caught a couple really big ones. So I think starting off, I'm gonna show you guys the lure that I just caught my personal best on earlier this year. It was a 6-pounder. It was a complete giant. It's not a giant for Florida, but that is a big one to me. That's the biggest largemouth bass I've ever caught, so it was super cool. And I had a couple other really big ones on this lure, but this is actually the Gambler 7-inch fat ace. It's like the biggest Cinco I've ever thrown. It is actually humongous. I don't know if you can tell how big that is, like in my hand, but it's humongous. And the largemouth bass definitely love it down there. What we were doing, we were basically just Texas rigging this massive Cinco. It's like as thick as a cigar. It's hilarious. But this Cinco right here is the deal, especially on Headwaters. Me and my dad were catching some absolute tanks on it, and this is what I caught my biggest largemouth bass ever on. It was the coolest thing ever. So me and my dad were actually just, like I said, Texas rigging these and casting them right along different cuts that we found on Headwaters, and the bass definitely loved them. So if you're going down there to South Florida, I recommend tying on this huge fat ace and giving it a couple casts out. It's almost a guarantee that you catch a big one on it. But next up would probably have to be a crankbait. And this one right here is like a green gizzard shad color. And not a lot of people throw crankbaits down there in Florida, but me and my dad are big crankbait fishermen here in Michigan. We've caught some of our biggest bass up here in tournaments and just while we're fun fishing all around Michigan. So we figured we would try some crankbaits down there, and we have caught some freaking tanks. My dad caught like a 6-7-pounder earlier this year. I think it was the first couple casts when we arrived at Headwaters, so that was really cool. But what you're doing with those crankbaits is making long casts and keeping your rod up high so it stays out of the weeds, but you almost want to like tickle the weeds with that crankbait so it's going right over the weeds. And if you get weeds with this, just jerk it out and let it float up and then start reeling again. But this crankbait right here, my dad's caught some freaking tanks on this thing. Next up is a lure that not a lot of people throw either down there, and me and my dad wrecked them last year on Headwaters Lake in Florida. And this is a jerkbait. A lot of guys throw them up north, and actually Tyler Rivette won a huge tournament on Lake Okeechobee with a jerkbait. Me and my dad are down there on Headwaters, and it was like in the 80s and 90s, and then the very next day it was in the 70s, and that is still pretty cold to throw a jerkbait up here in Michigan or the Midwest. But my dad was like, maybe that little change in temperature, they'll start hitting the jerkbait. And we found this area that had some deeper water, and we started throwing jerkbaits, and we were just wrecking the fish on jerkbaits. Me and my dad both caught a couple 4-pounders, no giants on this, but I just think we weren't in the right area. But we found a bunch of fish, but I don't think we were around any big ones where we were catching them. It was just fun catching a bunch of fish that day, but we definitely had a lot of fun throwing the jerk baits. But there's those baits, and honestly, this is probably a really good bait. Literally anywhere in the country, you guys have probably seen it, but the Jackhammer. And this is the black and blue one. Me and my dad always do good on the black and blue or the bluegill color. But the Jackhammer is always a staple in Florida, up here in the Midwest. Literally everywhere, anywhere in the country, the Jackhammer is always gonna catch you fish. So that is always tied on when I'm heading out to any lake in the country, literally. I've always got a Jackhammer on. But next up is a cool new bait I've been using. I threw it down there on Lake Okeechobee, and it is the Guggen Baits Love Grub. And what I was doing with this bait, I had a big weight on the front of it, and I was punching it in super thick knots. If you guys can see that lure right there, it is like a bigger body up front and then some craws down below. And that lure right there caught me some really nice bass on Kenansville down there in Florida. So that's a really good bait to throw if you're punching knots, because those big bass down there love getting in the thick cover. And you just put a little, or I guess you put a big weight up front and a couple bobber stoppers, and you chuck that thing in there, and the bass are gonna destroy it. But those are the top 5. I'm gonna show you another lure here in a sec that obviously most people down there in Florida throw. It's like a staple. But I was just gonna add it in here at the end to show you guys. But if you've never fished Florida, the speed worm is definitely probably the #1 bait to throw down there. Literally, my dad's got a couple 8-pounders on this thing. And he wasn't using this brand of one, but I just had these speed worms in the corner right there, so I grabbed them real quick to show you guys. But these speed worms are the deal down there in Florida. Literally, the bass destroy them. This is the green pumpkin with red flake in it, or watermelon red, same thing. But these speed worms are incredible. What you do, you just Texas rig them. You put a little weight on the front right here, and maybe like a 4/0 hook or 5/0, depending on the size of your lure. But this one's actually a smaller one. I think it's like a 6-inch or 7-inch, but they make some thicker ones as well. And me and my dad were catching a lot of fish throughout the years on the super thick speed worms. They've got a little tail right there on the end, and when you're reeling it through the water, it's making a ton of action on the back, and those largemouth bass destroy them down there. So I just wanted to quickly come on here and show you guys some of my favorite lures that me and my dad throw down there in South Florida. Obviously, everyone's got their own opinions on what lures work best down there, but in my opinion, these are some of my favorite lures that me and my dad have used over the years and caught some of our biggest fish down there. So really appreciate you guys watching today's video. Like I said, if you haven't yet, go hit that subscribe button. We're almost at 30,000 subscribers, so I would really appreciate it. But if you guys are actually down there in South Florida, me and my dad usually go down there late February or March. So if you guys are around, make sure to watch for us at the boat ramps. I always love meeting each and every one of you when you guys come up to me at the boat ramps. I ran into so many different people when I was down there last year in Florida, so that is always the best feeling. But enough talking, we're gonna wrap it up, and we will see you guys in the next one. Stay tuned.